Hello, welcome to another video. That peak behind me is quite possibly one of the hardest mountains I've been up, and certainly one of the most technical. Harder than the Anahiga, harder than Leagach, I think, and a bit more special, I think, more spectacular. So anyway, let's cut back to me at about 5 o'clock this morning, just after sunrise, heading in to this magnificent mountain. Now, good morning. I'll be very surprised if you can see me. I'm probably just a silhouette, so let me spin you around and show you. Well, one, you can see me because I'll be in the sun, and two, you'll be able to see where I'm going today. Oh, right, hopefully you can see me a little bit better now. And that, the mountain on your right, is Sgurna a different perspective to what you've just seen in the intro, but yeah, this is the start of the video. So the time it's 5:20. As you probably saw just from that shot there, the sun has literally just peaked its head above the horizon. So I'm up early, hoping to beat the midges and beat the crowds because the weather's good. Anyway, I'm going up here. I've only been up this mountain once before, and never done it from this way, so I'm really looking forward to it. And I'll tell you the story of the first time I did it, because it was a little bit special, but I'll tell you that later on. But for now, I'm going to get going, try and get some kilometres in and under the belt. I did arrive last night. I've stayed the night in the van. I came up after work actually. It was Friday, well it's Saturday today, but it was Friday last night, and I left Perth about 5:30, and oh, it took forever, the road was closed. But anyway, I got up here, and yeah, it was just lovely last night. Took a wee donder down by the river, and yeah, just sat in the van watching the sun go down. It was lovely. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get up here. Really looking forward to this. Bring you back in a wee while. As you can see, this was a good day for me to head up Sgurna because the weather was looking fabulous, and believe me, it's a peak that you want to keep for good weather, both for the views and also the technical aspects of the climb. Right, I am pretty much underneath the mountain now, as you can see, and the sun is now fully up, so I'm going to take a layer off here, maybe have a bite to eat. But from your perspective, where you're looking at the moment, the peak I'm going up is the one on the left, Sgurna Gillian. I don't know if you can make out, to the right of it is a mountain called Ambastir, and the canine that is sticking out to the right, that's called Bastir's Tooth, which is a climb. I think it's Naismith's route that goes up that on the traverse of the Full Ridge. But yeah, this is where I need to sort of make sure I'm going the right way. Now you might think, well, it's clear, Murray, so how can you get lost? But when you get off this grassy moorland and up onto the rocks, the paths are a little bit less distinct, so you have to be really careful. And there's a lot of steep ground here, and this isn't an easy route, and I'll come on to that later on. I'll explain more. There's a wee bit of history as well, which I'll tell you about, but for now I'm going to get a layer off, have a wee drink and get set for hitting the scrambling. I headed on, and from this point, although there's still grass here, I was soon going to be heading into the rockier parts of the mountain. And it's a bit of a walk in, as you saw, but it's this part here, just as you start to ascend the mountain, it gets really quite rocky, and it's not only the technical scrambling on the ridge you've got to be careful on, but the route finding in the upper corrie, which can be quite tricky, as there's lots of cliffs about as well. So care is definitely required, and making sure you're in the right part and on the right path when you're heading up here. But on today's adventure, things were looking good, the weather was fine, and I was on the right route. Okay, I don't know if you can see me or not. Let me just get up here. So I don't know if you can see above me up here, it's quite steep, and my safety message, as much as I'm wanting to keep the cap on to protect my face from the sun, I need to put my helmet on here, because just in case there's any rock fall from above, and especially with it being the Coolin Ridge. I did read a post this morning from last week from the Skye Mountain Rescue Team, and they'd done about 5 rescues this week. One of them, though, the walker, it wasn't a climber, it was a walker, had severe hand injuries, but the helmet was smashed in. He was wearing a helmet and that saved his life. So again, because you're in the cooling, if you're going up, even if it's really early like me today and you don't think there's anybody above you, there could well be somebody above you because you've got people traversing the ridge. So even on the easier peaks, I'd always recommend having a helmet with you. So let's just get this on, and yeah, I'll bring you back in a wee while if I can untangle it. There we go. The good thing about having this big hood, I can put it up and protect my neck from the sun, which is fine. Now stick my glasses back on as well. Starting to see Pinnacle Ridge as well. Hopefully I'll be able to show you that in its full glory as I get a bit higher. Stunning. Can't wait to do that. Right, let's go. You know that moment when you get onto a ridge, you finally see the view that you've not seen. Well, I can now see that view, and I'll show you this way first. I'll keep the suspense, I'll do a 360, that's Blaven. I'm not going to do a 360 actually, I'll do that at the top, that's Blaven there. And that's the way I've come down from, but there is my peak. Look at that, doesn't that look magnificent, Sgurrnagillion? And you can see now the rest of the cooling. Absolutely stunning. Look at that. So time for me to put my poles away and start to concentrate. This is where it gets serious, proper scrambling now, so I'll report back in a wee while. I put my poles away, and as you can see, the route ahead of me was just laid out before me, and it was just wonderful. It goes at a grade 2-3 scramble, so concentration was required. I have no idea how good the audio is on this new camera, but I'll try it out anyway. So it's been lovely, little chimneys, probably going to have a big grade 3. Now on the ridge, this is fantastic, great fun. Woo! What a place. You can see I've still got knife edge ridge to go. It's maybe really narrow at the top, so I'll bring you back there. Well, here I am, made it to the summit of Sgurrnagillion, and I'm standing to do this bit to camera now because you'll get a better view. I don't have a tripod with me, so you'll just be seeing me in the cairn, which you'll see in a minute, but look at this. In fact, let me just show you. I'll talk about this in a wee while, but the last time I was here I came up through this wee window. There's a wee window down there, and that's the West Ridge. I think it was down that way we came, and then this is the rest of the Coolin, Ambastia, Bruch na Freya, and then further round you've got the whole Coolin Ridge. Sgurra Maddy, Sgurra Gredy, Sgurra Alistair, Sgurra Gerarg, down to Sgurra Egg, Sgurra, I think it's Sgurrnagillion. No, that's what I'm on. I can't remember, the one at the end. Anyway, and round here, Sgurra Stree, Blaven. Anyway, I'm going to sit down for a wee minute or two and get my bearings, and I'll tell you about the last time I was here. I've still got to tell you about the history as well. I'll do that because I'm going to go down a wee bit, and there's another peak I want to go to, which could be just as spectacular. But anyway, right, I'll bring you back in a minute. Oh, hands in somebody's ashes. Is it just me, or is it getting more and more commonplace? But anyway, I think I'd probably want it to be scattered up here as well. What a peak. And I was going to tell you the story of the last time I was here, and it was nearly 2 decades ago. I've only done this mountain once. And when I did that, it was for charity. We did the whole ridge in weather similar to what we're getting today. And when we got here, oh, so tired. There was 2 groups of 3, and me, my brother and our friend Kevin were in the front group with the guide, Mike. It was Mike Harkley from Mountain and Sea Guides in Applecross. And my uncle and my cousin were in the second group, who were guided by the late great Andy Nesbitt. And what a trip it was. But I remember getting here, and that's when I was a lot younger and fitter, and I was pooped. And then we still had a big long trudge out, but we didn't come up the way I came up. We came up the West Ridge down there, and I remember we climbed up through the window, which I showed you, I think I talked about, and then we abseiled back down that way. So I've never been up this way, and what a ridge that is. That was fantastic. Probably a grade harder. The moves were a wee bit harder than the Anachigich. So it's not a walk in the park, that's for sure. But what a place. That means I've only got one more ridge to go, which is Pinnacle Ridge. So I think this has got to be one of the hardest. Outside, if you take Sgwr Gerarg and the Inpin away, this could be the hardest Munro to reach the top of. It's certainly up there in terms of technicality, but it's also one of the most spectacular. And the fact that it's a wee bit more difficult makes it even more special. But anyway, there's a party coming up, a ridge party obviously, because it's not even 8 o'clock, well it's 8:30 now. It's taken me about 3 hours to get up, which I think is good going. So I'm going to head back down, I'm going to take you to another peak, and I'll tell you a wee about the history I wanted to share the story of, because I think the peak down here will give a cracking view back to this one. So let's get my stuff going and we'll scramble down. Going down's always it's always harder, so I like to take my time. I spent a bit more time on the summit of Sgwr na Gillian, which means either peak of the young men or peak of the gully. I quite like the peak of the young men analogy, because I tell you what, I felt like I had to be young to get up here. It was a bit of a stretch, but it's a fantastic place, and indeed the best Sgwr of them all. Let's go. It's so nice having a nice light bag. Well, relatively light. I almost don't want to go. Maybe get the 360 camera out for going down, just because I need my hands. And yeah, let's go. I'll bring you back further down. Let's head to this other peak. You've always got to be more careful in the descent. It's always, well for me it always seems 2 or 3 times more tricky going down. It's going up. Maybe that's because you can see the drop in front of you. But yeah, you can see how rocky it is behind me. But I'm going to be heading down here, and this peak here, not the far away peak, but the nearest peak. That far away peak you need a bit of climbing. Ropes and harness for that, I think, if memory serves me right. But this one here is a nice wee peak. I think it's maybe a Sgwr Gerarg, I don't know. But I've got one more tricky drop to come. So I'm going to put the camera away for that. And then, yeah, I scramble over to this peak and I'm going to sit there and have breakfast. Can you guess what's for breakfast? You only get one guess. Right, let's go. I couldn't think too much about breakfast because, yeah, as I mentioned, going down a grade 2 scramble is a lot more tricky than going up it, if that makes sense, and concentration was certainly required. And you do have to reverse this route unless you decide to go down the West Ridge, which is graded at moderate, so even more tricky than a grade 2-3 scramble. But yeah, on the bits where I didn't have to concentrate too much, the walking was just delightful and the rock was nice and grippy. And before long I was back down on slightly easier ground, heading across to Sgwrbeg for a bite of breakfast. Now this is spectacular. Sometimes the smaller hills get better views than the big hills, and I've said this loads of times, because from the small hills you see the big hills. When you're on the big hills you can't see them because you're on them. But anyway, I've got the camera sat on the summit, which is literally about 10 stones, and another advantage of these wee hills is I doubt I'll see anyone here, so I'm just going to chill. I'm going to go for a snooze and I'm going to have some breakfast, but I'll bring you back in just a minute. What a place. this is lovely. I literally have been sleeping, snoozing, shall we say. But yeah, I thought I'd tell you some of the history. There's two stories, or two bits of history which are kind of prominent about Sgurr na Gillian. The first is that it was the first peak of the Cuillins anyway that was climbed. Up until that point, they were kind of deemed as unclimbable. I think a lot of the Alps had been done. A lot of the Alps had been done before some of these mountains, especially the Cuillin and Skye, had been explored. I think that was partly due to accessibility as well. I think, if memory serves me right, getting here, because there was no bridge obviously, you'd have to get the ferry up and climb them. Anyway, the first descent was done when local forester Duncan McIntyre guided. I think he was a botanist or a scientist, James Forbes, or Professor James Forbes, and they went up the way I went up the South East Ridge. They then came back apparently, and this was in 1836. They then came back in 1845 and climbed Bruch na Frith, and also then made the second descent of Sgurr na Gillian by its trickier West Ridge, which is the way I did it when I did the Ridge Traverse. So that was like 9 years between the two, so nobody had been there. So that's nearly 190 years ago when it was first climbed, and it was the first peak of the Cuillin to be done, which is, yeah, it's interesting actually, because it's probably one of the trickier ones. As I said, it's one of the hardest Munros, I think, to get to. And what a place it is. Anyway, this is a lovely spot. As you can probably see by this majestic view behind me, this peak here actually offers better views than from the summit of Sgurr na Gillian, in my humble opinion, because you're seeing Sgurr na Gillian. So if you're coming up here and you maybe back out of going up the ridge because you don't like scrambling or the weather's not great, there's not much scrambling to get to the top of this peak. It's called Sgurr Beg, which I think means small peak. And it's a lovely, lovely summit. And you'd probably get the whole place to yourself if you come this way. It's absolutely lovely. But anyway, let me tell you a wee bit more. There's another bit of history. I'll swing you around over here because it's a bit more pertinent to show you what's down below me over here. Right. Quite steep ground here, so I have to be careful where I'm sitting. So down below me here, it sweeps all the way around. But behind me, this peak here, the last peak on the Cuillin Ridge, actually, that's another thing I was going to talk about. Most people, like myself, when I did the Cuillin Ridge Traverse, see Sgurr na Gillian as the last peak, but you can also come out to this one. Although this isn't a Munro, this is technically, I think, probably the end proper of the ridge, and probably the most technical peak to get up, and that's probably why most people don't do it. But there have been people, if you read the amazing book by W.H. Murray, Undiscovered Scotland, I'm sure they talk about doing the Cuillin Ridge and then the greater Cuillin Ridge Traverse, which then includes over here, and then I think Sgurr na Strí and Blaven, and then you get people to do that, and then also include all the red Cuillin. So hats off to those guys. I just remember when I was young and fit that it nearly ended me just doing the normal Ridge Traverse. But anyway, the reason I brought you down here is below the peak here is like Harta Quarry. It's a big quarry that kind of swings round. It's an amazing place. And down here, and it's actually marked on the OS map, is something called the Bloody Stone. And it's called that because, and I'm reading this from Google, my friend Google, it says, in Harta Quarry a savage battle was fought in 1398 between the invading MacDonalds and the MacLeods, who did not acknowledge the claims of Lord of the Isles. According to legend, they fought for the entire day until every MacLeod had been killed. The bodies of the slain were then stacked up around a huge rock, which subsequently became known as the Bloody Stone. I think that's it, away down yonder. You're not able to see it. There's another version, however, of this bloody tale, which claims that Harta Quarry was simply used to distribute the spoils, and the Bloody Stone, so the Bloody Stone is called that either because the spoils were put down there, or when the MacDonalds beat up or slain the MacLeods. That's where they stacked up the bodies. Pretty brutal place, Scotland back in the day. Anyway, here's a wee bit of history for you. Anyway, right, I suppose I better think about heading back down. I mean, it's only 10:20. I've had a sleep, I've had a snooze, I've had my Scotch egg. It's magic, so yeah, I'll maybe do that. I'll bring you back and I'm heading back down. I'll put my helmet back on just for dropping back down into the upper quarry. I think in bad weather it'd be quite difficult you just have to get your navigation spot on because there's a lot of steep ground getting into that upper quarry. Once you're in there and then down over into the lower quarry, it's a little bit easier, but from there onwards it's pretty technical ground. It is called the tourist path, but there's nothing, if you're a tourist and you've never been walking or scrambling or climbing before, don't even attempt to come up here because, as I said, it's pretty serious ground. Anyway, right, safety lesson number 2 finished. Right, let's go. Having had my snooze, it was time to head back down. It was still relatively early because I'd left so early, but now that the morning was getting on a wee bit, the warmth of the sun was starting to tell, and it was getting really, really warm. There was a wee breeze on the ridge, but as I descended down into the quarries, it got warmer and warmer, and there was only one thing for it when I turned the corner on the burn. This looks too good. Spin you around, hopefully you can see what I'm looking at. Wow, look at this, wonderful. Oh yes. Wow. With the heat of the day and the cool water, there was only one thing for it. I stripped off, I do apologise for the nudity. I did have my underwear on. Stripped off and headed into this wonderful pool. And there was loads of these on the way down, just so many to choose from, but this was special and so refreshing. I'm so glad that I decided to stop and take a dip. I felt brilliant after it. Anyway, after soaking in the water, it was time to get going, and I got my clothes back on and headed back down, and a few hours later I found myself back at the van in the searing heat of the day. It's not often you get to say that in Scotland, believe me. Oh, right, hopefully you can see me. I think the last time I did a bit to camera was maybe at the swimming, when I was doing a wee bit of swimming, and I've come back down and I went down to the Slig and had a cheeseburger there, which was very nice. So that was fine. And yeah, I just thought I'd come out. I was going to do a bit in the van and give you a synopsis today, but I thought, well, why not come out, because it's beautiful. There's a breeze blowing, so there's no midges. It's lovely. So today was fantastic. What a peak Sgurrnagillion is, and the route that I went up was brilliant, especially with the weather that we've got. The rock was super grippy, even the basalt was was grippy, which was nice. And there was a few steep sections. It goes at grade 2/3, and there's certainly 2 or 3 steps which I would put at grade 3, which was fine. But I think the real difficulty is, unless you've got a rope and a harness and you go down the West Ridge, where you should, an abseil is helpful. You have to reverse the route if you're going up that way, and coming down something that you've gone up, which is 2-3, is I think personally is a lot more tricky than going up it. So yeah, I think for that reason, I would say it was a wee bit harder than the Annachigich and things like Curved Ridge, because you can go up Curved Ridge and then down the sort of normal route. So yeah, just bear that in mind. Another revelation for today was was Sgurr the wee peak that I went to. I would urge anyone that wants to take a nice photograph, or even just have a nice wee snooze like I did, just make that wee bit of effort to go over to the Sgurr because the views back, seeing Sgurrnagillion from that angle, I think it's possibly one of its most impressive views to look at it from, and hopefully I've got some nice shots. Anyway, what else would I say about today? Again, it's perfect weather, and I think you'll be able to see from the topo or the route at the end, where I'll put my GPS and stats up. I think I came down a slightly different way. The upper quarry can be quite tricky, and I think in the Clag or in bad weather you'd have to be careful coming down there, because there are some cliffs and some steep ground. I went up towards the left. That's when I put my helmet on, close to the cliffs, but I came down a lot further over, and I think the key to that route was finding a small cairn which marked a small kind of hidden cleft that took you down through some cliffs. So just to bear in mind if you're coming up here. But what a place. I'm going to end the video here. If you've made it this far listening to my ramblings, thank you so much for watching. As always, please stay safe out there, and I'll see you next week for another adventure.